Here at Gardens Wellness, we use the Ditolo colonic equipment, and each person gets an individual kit, and this is fully sterilized and disposable. And so what we have here is this nice gentleman getting his colonic, and he's already set up where he has his equipment already in place. And what will happen is the water is just gently running through his colon and out the waistline, and when he does start to release, you'll see that moving through this tube here. And the session takes about 45 minutes, and during that time I'll do some abdominal massaging to kind of help the waist move, and it also gives me an idea as to what's going on in the colon. And then, do you feel any pain or anything going on?
No, it's very pleasant actually.
Okay, very good. As you can see, the patient is fully covered. There's never any invasion to their privacy, and we're always respectful of that. And also, this is a fully closed system, so there's no odor, there's no sounds, there's no mess, and everything is disposable, as we've mentioned before. So after 45 minutes, the person will get up off the table and go into a private restroom that's here in the room for them, and then we're done. Thank you for your assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We're at Gardens Wellness Center in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, sitting and speaking with Diane Fragale, colon hydrotherapist. Diane, tell us a bit about your profession.
Well, colon hydrotherapy is a therapeutic service that's performed to cleanse the colon. And basically it's believed by certain alternative healers that disease starts in the colon. So when we rid the body of the waste that's built up in the colon, we can actually reverse disease.
So disease can actually form from the toxins that are building up. How does the buildup occur?
Well, that is our belief. We don't have any science to prove that. Well, the buildup occurs because people generally will be eating foods that are hard to digest. They don't leave the body in a timely manner. Stress, there's a variety of factors why people aren't really eliminating everything that they're eating. And then that waste sits in the body, forms gases, permeates the blood, permeates organs, and eventually some part of the body will break down. And it's usually a place where somebody might already have a bit of a weakness, inherited or for whatever reasons. So, like, for example, for me, I was 28 years old and I developed very bad chronic asthma, and I had an asthmatic condition that was kind of developed over time. I wasn't born with it, I didn't have it as a child. And as I started researching alternative healing, because the doctors had me on prednisone and inhalers, and I didn't want to live my life on prednisone, so I started seeking alternative healing, and I found a lot of information. And the one thing that really turned around my disease was colon hydrotherapy. So when I cleansed my colon, my asthmatic condition improved, and over the course of a few months, completely went away. So I am living proof that cleansing the colon will heal the body. I've seen it over 17 years as a colon hydrotherapist. I've seen many diseases reverse: high blood pressure, cholesterol. There are people we've worked with that did have cancer. Of course, it's a more rigorous approach in approaching that with nutrition and fasting and alkaline diets. So colon hydrotherapy is an amazing service that more people should be trying out.
People assume that whatever they put into their body just eventually comes out. Mm-hmm. How do things get trapped in the colon? What are the dynamics of the colon that causes things to build up for years like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, what happens with the colon is responsible for absorbing water, and that's what makes the bowel. So the longer something sits in the colon, the more that the water is going to get extracted, the harder it's going to get. It will literally turn into tire rubber. And so as a result of the matter hardening and sitting around, it becomes impossible for the person to get it out at a certain point, and it will build up. And the colon has a lot of twists and turns and bends and folds, and things will get stuck in all of these places. Now, you could even be going to the bathroom on a daily basis. You can be eliminating waste, and still there could be, like on the walls of your colon, or a little bit of a pocket that forms, and waste is going right by it. And it's that waste that's sitting on the walls of the colon that is becoming disease. Because if you would leave anything, even on your skin or your face, eventually it's going to cause bacteria, virus, fungus, anything is possible. So that's how it does sit in the colon.
What is the difference between a colonic and an enema?
Well, they are similar. The enema generally will have a lot less water, and so it won't get as deep into the colon. An enema also requires the person implant some water, stand up, sit on the toilet, get rid of it, do it again, and repeat that several times. In the colonic, it's a much more pleasurable experience because you're just laying down relaxing, and the colon therapist is doing all the work. So basically the colonic will last about 45 minutes, and enema will last about 5. So you're getting much deeper into the colon. It's a much more effective cleanse.
What do you see when you get into the higher area of the colons? Do you often see worms and parasites?
I have never seen worms and parasites. I know that I have heard that a lot of therapists do tell people that they have seen that. I don't really know what they're seeing. I can't comment on that. I assume a lot of that stuff is microscopic. We see a lot of what we call mucus ropes that can mimic a worm, but I personally don't think that they are worms. And a lot of times when somebody's releasing, it's all in with the waste, so there's not much that you can see in terms of worms or parasites or things like that. I have not seen it. Now, we would have to probably take the waste and investigate and put it under a microscope, and we don't do that here.
How is it that you see what's coming out?
There is a view tube in this device that we use here at Gardens. Usually any colon hydrotherapy procedure will have a way to see the waste that's coming out. There are several different types out on the market these days, and there's always a way to view what's coming out of the person's body. You'll either see it through the tube that's coming out of the body, or you'll see it in a basin if it's an open system. Actually what we see with the waste tells us a lot about the digestion and the state of the health of the person.
What is the system like here at Gardens Wellness Center?
Gardens uses a Dutolo machine. It's a pressure machine, and that has a view tube where you can see the waste under a light, and maybe we'll take you over there and go look at it. And you can see exactly what's coming through, what's coming out of the person.
Is there any sort of odor or smell that...
No. None at all.
So it's all closed and...
It's a closed system, everything's contained in the tubes, and there is no smell whatsoever.
What can a person experience? Do they go back to work afterwards? Do they go home and go to bed? What is the normal colonic experience like?
Normally, a colonic should make you feel better after the colonic, so you feel a little lighter, you feel a little rejuvenated, you feel like you just shed like a lot of layers of like heaviness, and people have told me that they can see better, they can hear better, they have better yoga classes. A colonic really should have you feeling better on the way out the door. More energy. Now, at the very least, sometimes if it's the first colonic, a person might feel the same after the colonic. They say, well, not much changed. And that's because the walls of the colon are still pretty heavily laden. And so we didn't get to the tissue. We didn't get to oxygenate the body. And so that person didn't actually achieve that yet. And that's why we recommend a series of maybe 3 or 5. It just really depends on the person. But if somebody has done a series, 3 or 5 colonics, each colonic should give them an uplift of energy.
And that's because the colon is so large that it takes several sessions to get all that waste out?
Yeah, it's for that reason, and also because there's layers of hardened fecal matter, and it takes a while. So it's much like scrubbing a pot after you have cooked. The body is basically cooking with inside because it's 98.6, and so it's so hard that the water can go right by it, just like your pot where you're trying to like rinse off, cooked matter, cooked food. It's not going to come off. So we have to do that and repeat that several times, and also ask the person to kind of maybe change their diet a little bit, include more vegetables, more cellulose, more fiber, and that will help.
Okay. Does this help with constipation?
It absolutely can correct constipation, and a lot of people do find that if they have been constipated, the colonic will help them go a little more regularly. Now, sometimes after a very large release, like there are some cases where somebody can come in and they have a tremendous colonic, meaning that they released a lot of waste. They may then come back the following week as part of their series and say, well, it took like 3 days for me to go to the bathroom again. Well, that tells me what kind of transit time their body has. So their body is used to eating, and whatever it is they eat releases out of their body maybe 4 days after. And so their body thinks that they're good now because my colon's empty, so I'm going to wait 3-4 days and then I'll get to go again. But we can, over 2 or 3 colonics, actually increase their transit time, so that should change after a series of colonics, or sometimes even one. Depends on the person's diet. A heavy protein eater will probably find that their transit time is a lot slower than somebody who has a high percentage of plant-based or vegetarian food.
What about people that are on medications that cause constipation?
And medications cause constipation. Also, most pharmaceutical medications are very drying to the body. And so that person should definitely increase their water intake, generally speaking. Now, if they continue to take a medication, the colonic is going to help because it's going to hydrate. We're putting the water into the body. It should probably be the same for a person on medication as opposed to no medication.
What about people with IBS? What causes that, and how do colonics help?
Well, irritable bowel is obviously a complicated syndrome, and it can have some emotional components. It could have some stress. It could also be due to the buildup of waste in the colon, because it's going to be irritating to what's going on inside the body. So if there's a heavy acid diet or acid in the body because of stress, which can happen, colonics are really helpful, because that irritation from the buildup of this acid waste is just going to continue as a process unless we cleanse it. And then the person has a very good chance of having it heal. Of course, we have to maybe increase an alkaline diet and maybe address other things that are causing the irritable bowel on an emotional or lifestyle level.
What are the age ranges that can receive colonics?
Generally, I like to stick with 18 to maybe 70. I'm not that happy giving somebody a colonic who's maybe younger than 18. There are some cases where, that's kind of necessary, but usually a child or a young adult can be helped with just a little bit of a diet change. They don't really have such impaction in their colon. I have had a couple of cases where I've worked on somebody who was 14 and 16, but it's very, very rare. And that would just be maybe a once or twice to kind of correct something and maybe, make some changes, and then they should be able to function normally on their own. Elderly also can be a little bit risky because the body doesn't like big change after a certain period of time in their lives. So I hesitate to do that much to somebody who's over 70, unless they've been getting colonics. Getting colonics, then you're fine. Most people who come in for colonics are somewhere in their 30s or 40s. My first colonic, I was 28, and I am noticing a lot of people will tell me, oh, I'm like 27, 28, 29, somewhere pre-30, and the body is making a little bit of a shift. It's not so happy eating fries and pizza anymore and downing it with like a, Slurpee or Coke or something. So the body will it's very resilient. It puts up with this diet for a long period of time, and in a couple of decades, it starts speaking back. and then people notice those symptoms. As soon as somebody notices some symptoms, it's a good time to do a colonic. There's no sense in waiting. It's such an easy, gentle process, and it feels so good when you're done that there's no point in suffering with symptoms. And from my experience, quite honestly, there is no product, there is no pill, there is no powder, and there's no quick fix. I mean, people try all of those things, and a lot of times people have come in and said, I've been on this and that, over-the-counter, prescription, and still nothing. And 1 or 2 colonics can really help.
So what do you recommend for people to do when they want to come in for colonics? They're embarrassed, they are fearful this could be painful, or they're going to be exposed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really about focusing on the results. And if we focus on the results and whatever the symptoms are that are bringing them in for the colonic, it's better to focus on that than all the other stuff, which really, I'm just a human being. I'm a woman. I've lived through it all. I mean, I've had my own colonics, and so I just don't think that it's as bad as they think as soon as they just, take that first step, lay on the table, and just get over the initial jitters. And most things in life that we do the first time, we have initial jitters, so I think it's normal. But I think that it goes away very quickly. And I always approach it from a health point of view, from a clinical point of view. We'll chat, we'll talk about boyfriends and movies, and it's a fun experience, really, all in all.
So is the person covered, for privacy?
Of course. Yes, their body is covered.
Is there anything else that you would like to share about colonics and healing with the viewers?
Well, I encourage everybody to get a colonic at least once because it's an eye-opening experience. I mean, people even who think that they're eliminating every day and they have no problem, the colon is 6 feet long. It's actually as long as you are tall, standing with your arms stretched up. And that is an enormous amount of waste. So just because a few inches come out on a daily basis doesn't mean that we're getting everything out of our colon. And the health benefits and the preventative measures are just like amazing. So I would encourage everybody to give it a try. And more information is out online, so it's so easy to get the information and feel comfortable and not feel like you're doing something so weird, because a lot of people are doing them.
How long have colonics been going on? What's the history?
Well, colon cleansing dates back as long as the culture of China and the Romans and the Greeks. I mean, people were always cleansing their colons, and it was known that if there was anything wrong with you, you had any type of health issue, if you had a fever, then people would look to cleanse their colon, understanding that that's where the waste is building up, so that's where the healing should be taking place.
It's very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for providing this information to our viewers.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at Gardens Wellness Center. I'm Cheryl Martin.